Welcome to Mocktails and Masterpieces with the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra.
Greetings, ICO friends. Another Mocktails and Masterpieces here as we gear up for our November program. I am thrilled to be joined by Karen LeFrak and Sharon Isbin, who are the superstars for this program. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are very, very excited about the Miami Concerto, a work now which has been performed several times, composed by Karen, championed by Sharon. I want to start talking, first of all, because this wasn't your first collaboration together, as I've understand it. You've worked together, you've had works premiered before by Karen. So talk to us about how your friendship and your relationship first started.
Actually, this was our first collaboration. After the piece was written, the National Symphony Orchestra said that they wanted to perform the first movement with Enrico Lopez Llanes, and he said, "Pick who would you like as a soloist?" And Justin Ellis, who had organized the whole thing, said, "Who would you like as a soloist for your piece?" Well, Sharon Isbin came out of my mouth faster than anything you could imagine, but I never dreamed that she would love it. I didn't know, I only wished. Then I got a call that said, Sharon wondered about measure such and such. And I said, oh God, I think that means she liked it. And from then on, it was love at first sight. She came over for lunch and I played the whole concerto all over again. And she said, this is amazing. And I said, the Miami Symphony said that they would premiere it because as it happened, it was my husband's idea to write this in the first place. And Eduardo Martire said, you write it, I'll play it. And I said, could you imagine if Sharon did it again after the performance of the first movement? And lo and behold, Sharon said she'd love to. And the love affair began.
It's incredible. Sharon, you have done more for classical guitar on stages around the world, and you have been a champion of living composers. I mean, I was looking through the list of collaborators, and it's the who's who of American composers: Chris Brubeck, Leo Brouwer, Tan Dunn, Daniel Poor, Cariliano, David Diamond, Kernis, Swantner. Talk to us about new music, particularly for your instrument, and why you've embraced it and championed it across stages everywhere.
Well, first of all, I'm very honored to be at the helm of bringing this beautiful concerto by Karen to audiences across the country. And I would have to say that the idea of commissioning and premiering concerti, it was a bug that bit when I was about 17 years old. And I happened to hear a lecture by an Israeli composer for harp that he had composed, a concerto and many works for the solo instrument. And I approached him and I said, I think you would write a great guitar concerto. He thought I was nuts because he didn't think the guitar was a viable instrument, but I persevered and played for him and won him over. And a year later, I had a beautiful concerto. And this is how I discovered that the idea of being part of something very new, be part of the creative process, was really extraordinary and something that excited and inspired me. So I've been approaching amazing composers ever since.
Oh, that's phenomenal. And I'm very curious to hear from both of you about this process of writing new music for guitar, because specifically there are anecdotes everywhere in history of Brahms, who wrote for Joseph Joachim, and Brahms didn't play the violin. Also Mendelssohn and Ferdinand David. You can go down the list of composers who, if that instrument they're composing for isn't their instrument, they may or may not necessarily know the limitations of the instrument or what it's capable of, or things that are, idiomatic for, finger position, et cetera, et cetera. So Karen, I'll start with you. Do you play the guitar? And if not, then how did you go about writing?
I do not play the guitar. All of the melodies that you hear in the three movements were originally on piano. And if you are a melodic writer, a lyrical writer, it is easy to take that melody and put it in an instrument that has that has that quality that you were looking for. And fortunately, the guitar, the melodies lended themselves to that instrument. And I was just lucky. I think I have a good ear, and I was lucky enough to figure out what the guitarist could do. But let me tell you, Sharon and I had many meetings where she gave me choices of different articulation and different ways of presenting things. And so I give a lot of credit to knowing how to write for the guitar, to Sharon, who sat with me out for hours on the 3 different movements.
Well, I still think in a former life you must have been a guitarist, because it is very rare experience for me to be able to play a score without having to make very many changes at all. Maybe a couple of octaves we decided didn't need to happen. But other than that, it fits so naturally for the instrument. And as I've said before, there was no torture involved. And that is often the case where I have to translate something that is given to me, a score, and make it idiomatic for the instrument. This was just a process of letting the music flow and pure pleasure. So I'm grateful to you for that. Whatever your previous life instincts might have been, they came through, and this is really a guitar piece.
Oh, it's marvelous. Sounds like a match made in heaven. And obviously, this has taken on a tremendous life as it's been performed not only by the Orchestra of St. Luke, but Vancouver Symphony, as we were discussing earlier, Aspen as well. I'd like to share with our audience now a video of that recording process, which is just charming. And this is the video of that recording process with the Orchestra of St. Luke. So, Karen, talk to us about that endeavor, the recording. I mean, it looked like there was great energy there. And then, what were your thoughts? And then, Sharon, I'll ask you the same question about actually hearing this come to life now on recording. There's a lot of pressure, obviously, involved in recording, and you're hearing this, but it seemed like everything just went wonderfully.
Well, we were fortunate to have Grammy-winning producer Elaine Martone at the helm of the recording session, and great engineers to put it together. But I can tell you, walking in and seeing the orchestra and seeing the conductor and seeing Sharon sitting in front of them, the first measure was out of body. I mean, if anybody could imagine, it was like this. Oh my God, listen to that, listen to this. And then the process was so interesting because they would go over segments to make sure that they liked that segment. And later, brilliant Elaine was able to select all of the different takes, put them together. I don't know how she did it. And we were thrilled with what happened, thrilled with the outcome. The percussion section blew me away. They were just can you say, Sharon, the background heart of it, even though you were...
The percussion is the beating heart of the entire piece, because the concerto is inspired by Latin dances. And when you have that, and you have a spectacular ensemble of the top Latin players of percussion in New York City, led by, I like to brag about him a lot, Javier Diaz, who just won a Tony for his onstage performances in the Broadway musical Buena Vista Social Club. And you've got these great people interacting together with all kinds of exotic instruments that really communicate the flavor and feeling and spirit of the Miami Concerto.
And Sharon, that is a very important point too, because you could play the rhythms just as they're notated on the page, but you could very easily miss that natural soul of that music if it's not a style that you're familiar with. I've heard so many people try to get Congo rhythms right, to get tango rhythms right, and if you don't imbue it with that heart and soul of it, so you really were in great hands, it sounds like, with a tremendous team. But even then, if I may, the music goes down on paper or into a computer program, you play it, but then there's always a natural evolution with a brand new work because there isn't that history, that performative history of a work like a Rodrigo concerto, for example. Can you both talk to us, and I'll start with you, Sharon, about how the concerto has evolved in this brief time since you've recorded it and now performed it several times?
Well, there certainly is some improvisational level going on in the percussion when Javier is playing bongos and the others are playing the various instruments you will hear. For me, the process is just discovering more and more depth. One of the things that Karen and I worked on together, and the choices that I would give her would be different fingerings, because you can play the same note in 5 different places often on the guitar, and each will produce a different color and character and spirit, different kind of vibrato, different sustain, and also the embellishments, the little trills, the slides, what we would call the Spanish spices and Latin American spices that add to the feeling of it. If you consider this something of a combination of Latin pop with classical, they meet create a new third evolution that, for me, all this is changing each time I play it, the improvisational rhythms that might happen in some of the movements. So it's just being in the moment, being in the spirit of the piece, and exuding the passion that it communicates.
And the same question for you too, Karen, about the evolution of this. I mean, as a composer, this is probably quite common for you. As I talk to so many composers, when they actually hear the music played by humans in a room, with a shared audience, that there's sometimes, the desire to amend a few things here and there. Talk to us about your compositions in general. Do you find that this is normally the case, or once it hits the paper, that's what it is?
That's so interesting. The majority of my work are peaceful piano pieces. I think I have maybe 14 albums that are launched in the world. And I listen to these little miniature pieces and I try to figure what I would do differently or what I did wrong. And very rarely do I feel like I've made a terrible mistake with all of them. And the same thing with the concerto. I don't think that there were places that I would redo. I was fortunate. I give credit to this brilliant arranger I have, Bill Ross, who was the person who said, "You've written Latin dance rhythms," and he gave me names for all of them. The first, the guaguancó, the second, the tango, and the third, the bembe. And I don't think I would change any of those rhythms. Sharon took the added notes on the cadenza in the second movement, only to make it so much better than I had thought of. So I don't think I would change too much of that concerto. Would you, Sharon?
I don't think there's one extra note or extra measure, and that is the kind of frugality that I think helps the expressivity of music, because you are able to communicate something in a very direct, concise, beautiful way that allows the audience to feel the spirit, the character that you're communicating. And of course, a lot of them go nuts after they hear it because they really love the joyous nature that it presents and the lyricism. I love exploring the lyricism of the guitar. I've always been inspired by vocal music and have performed with many and recorded with many singers, because that is what I aspire to as a musician. And we can create that lyricism on the guitar in ways that no other instrument can.
I think what's important for in my music is that I want to say the most with the least amount of notes. How's that?
I think that's a good goal to have. Yes.
I love that. And our audiences are in for a real treat when you join us in Indianapolis for the Miami Concerto. It's been a pleasure talking to both of you remarkable women. I look forward to seeing you in Indianapolis soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.